Hi, buonasera. What's poppin'? Happy holidays, happy Thanksgiving. It's your boy Big Rich. Mob stories right off the streets of Queens, New York City, where we get busy. Salute. I hope everybody had a happy holiday. Sorry there was no morning show today. I got really, really drunk last night. And, once in a while, I think that's the first time that I didn't do the morning show because I got so fucked up that I just wouldn't be able to do it. That is the first time in almost 2 years. That's not bad, There's always a first time for everything. I hope everybody had a good evening. I hope you ate well, drank merry, drank well, smoke well, throw some smoke in the atmosphere. You already know. Time to get back to business for the holidays. Of course, everybody's Irishman. I'm gonna see if Clark wants to do a show tomorrow night where we critique the Irishman. I'll see what he's doing. He has a family. It's the holidays. I want everybody to relax, take it easy, right? The team that brings you to you. No need to mention names. You already know how we get down. This evening's show is sponsored by Justice Tech Pros. Go check them out. Despite publicly pushing an anti organized crime agenda in a bid to reclaim the top spot in his beloved Teamsters before his death, slain labor boss Jimmy Hoffa was politicking behind the scenes with Suncoast mafia dons of New Orleans, Carlos Marcello of New Orleans, and Santo Trafficante of Florida, Nick Licata of California, and Joe Bonanno of Arizona, in an attempt to get them to back him in a battle against Midwest and East Coast mob bosses for power in the Mammoth Trucker and Cartage Haulers Union, per sources familiar with the situation and federal records related to Hoffa's murder. Hoffa did a series of national media interviews in the early 1970s campaigning for a return to the Teamsters presidency, where he promised to cleanse the union of mob influence if reelected. He never made it to the election. Hoffa's ploy ultimately failed, and he disappeared on the afternoon of July 30th, 1975, in his hometown of Detroit, most likely murdered by a team of mob hitmen representing crime families in Michigan and New York. His body has never been found, and no arrests have ever been made in the case which grows to be the most iconic and talked about unsolved mystery in American history. The Hoffa case is back in the headlines because of the new Martin Scorsese movie, The Irishman, starring Robert De Niro as Frank the Irishman Sheeran, a Delaware teamster and gangland enforcer who claims responsibility for killing Hoffa. Al Pacino plays Hoffa in the Netflix production, already generating Oscar buzz. Joe Pesci should win an Oscar. With the backing of mob bosses in Detroit, Hoffa rose to be president of the Teamsters Union. He was sent to prison for fraud in 1967 and forced to relinquish control of the union to his vice president, Frank Fitzsimmons. Hoffa expected from Fitzsimmons, his longtime right hand, and an open invitation to return to the post after he got set free. Neither expectation was met. The Mafia's National Commission threw their support behind the easier to puppet Fitzsimmons, and Hoffa was ordered to retire from union affairs upon his release from prison late 1971. Hoffa and Fitzsimmons came up together as Teamsters Local 299 in southwest Detroit, down by Tiger Stadium. They were under the of Detroit's Stocco Zirelli crime family, led by Joe Zirelli, an old school godfather with strong ties to the New York underworld. Zirelli was on the commission, one of a select few dons from outside New York allowed a seat on the governing body, and he kept tabs on Hoffman Fitzsimmons through his hand-picked protege and street boss, Anthony Tony Jack Giacalone. It was the steely-eyed Giacalone who was tasked with telling Hoffa his services were no longer needed in Teamsters leadership, news that prompted Hoffa to launch into a public relations offensive in the press, as per FBI informants, start reaching out to his contacts in Southern and West organized crime circles as a means of rallying support. According to these informants, desgraciad, Hoffa's overtures were met with swift rebuttals. Hoffa went missing on his way to a rendezvous with Tony Giacolone and New Jersey mob figure Anthony Tony Provenzano, Tony Pro, for a sit down to resolve a union related beef between Hoffa and Tony Pro, the most juiced in Teamster operating on the eastern seaboard. Provenzano was the New York Genovese crime family's point man in the Garden State. During his reign as Teamsters president in 1957 and 1970, Hoffa was linked to Big Easy mob boss Carlo Marcello and Tampa godfather Santo Trafficante in conspiracy theories regarding mafia involvement in CIA affairs, the Bay of Pigs, the plot to kill Cuban dictator Fidel Castro, and the 1963 assassination of U.S. President John F. Kennedy. FBI records from the Kennedy era allege that mob families in Detroit and Chicago made a backroom deal with Kennedy's underworld connected father, Joe, and rigged voting booths in Illinois, Indiana, and West Virginia to propel JFK into the White House. In 1973, Hoffa had dinner in Hollywood at Musso and Frank Grill with LA Mafia chief Nick Licata and his underboss Dominic Brooklier, and at the meal, Hoffa pressed a pair of West Coast mob luminaries for help in securing Teamster delegate voting blocks in California. According to an FBI memo circulated that same year, Licata and Brooklier both had ties to Hoffa's home base in Detroit. Licata got his start in Motown, and his son Carlo was a soldier in the Tocco Zirelli family, while Brooklier's brother Joe was a button man in the Michigan crime syndicate. Hoffa met with Joe Bonanno at a Tuscan golf club in 1974 per two FBI informants to discuss Hoffa's issues in the Teamsters and his problems with the mob's National Commission. Bonanno was a founding member of the commission until being deposed in the wake of a failed power play the previous decade and ran off to the Arizona desert. Bonanno allegedly sent word back to Hoffa via Carlo Licata in a message relayed at his dad's October 1974 funeral that no aid would be forthcoming from the Bonanno camp in Tuscan, according to an FBI debriefing document. Licata was in charge of arranging sit-downs for Hoffa and Tony Giacolone to speak in private at his house in the years preceding Hoffa's murder, per sources. A number of current and retired FBI agents suspect Hoffa was executed at Licata's Bloomfield Township home on July 30th, 1975, lured to the residence under the pretense that this was a sit-down with Tony Giacolone and Tony Provenzano at a nearby restaurant, had been moved up the road to a place he was familiar meeting Giacolone at. Licata himself ended up dead under suspicious circumstances on the property 6 years to the day of Hoffa's disappearance on July 30, 1981. Now, Scott Bernstein salutes you, respect on the article. Uh, you know, I just have to be responsible and say a lot of this is per the testimony of informants. Informants, you know, may say things sometimes in order to better help their case, which may not be true. So that's all I want to say. Great article. It would make sense that Jimmy Hoffa would turn to other mob figures to get help in getting back to the top of the Teamsters Union. You know what I'm saying? So salute on that, of course. And again, tonight's episode was sponsored by Justice Tech Pros. Go check them out, guys. All right. Salute everybody. Have a great holiday. Good evening. And we will talk soon. Mob stories. You already know the team. You already know how we do. And of course, throw some smoke in the atmosphere. Don't be shy. I still got that gorilla glue. Salute.